money, and he was determined, come hell or high water, to become a very rich man. When Warren Buffett was still only a teenager in Washington, D.C., he was in a huge hurry to become rich. So right after graduation from Woodrow Wilson High School in 1947, he wanted to be an investor. But on his father's insistence, he did go to college. And then in 1950, it was off to business school at Columbia University in New York. Warren's favorite professor was Ben Graham, the author of The Intelligent Investor.
He was enthralled by Ben Graham and understood that Ben Graham was teaching him the framework from which he could invest.
And what Graham said is, look, stocks, they're just pieces of paper, but they represent something. They represent a part ownership in the business underneath, right? And the way to buy a stock is just as if you were buying the business.
The key, if there's one key to what I do, it's I look at every share of stock as being a part of a business. That means I think about the business. I don't think about the price action of the stock, or I don't think about what people are saying they're going to earn next quarter, or anything of the sort, or look at charts. I just try and look at the business.
It is the cornerstone of these investing principles that Buffett has never veered from. He's added to them, but he's never veered from those principles.
In 1951, Buffett returned to Omaha, where he worked in his father's brokerage. The 21-year-old fell in love with Susan Thompson, a college friend of Warren's younger sister, Roberta.
Oh, Susie was an amazing person. She had been president of Central High, and that was very unusual in those days to have a girl as class president. She also could sing and was in the musicals, and people loved Susie, and she loved other people.
But not Warren Buffett. She had another boyfriend, so Warren courted her father instead.
Susie's dad and mother, who were good friends of my parents, they were very keen on Warren, and Warren played his ukulele and Doc Thompson played his mandolin together or something, you know, I don't know. But he won her.
They were married in April 1952, and over the next 6 years they had 3 children, Susan, Howard, and Peter. In 1956, Buffett went into business for himself, and a year later he was working out of a house on Farnham Street that he had bought for $31,500. His neighbor, Don Keogh, thought he was a slacker.
He never went to work. He did some funny thing on the telephone, and I was a salesman out selling coffee in the working day and then late in the evening.
But the guy who stayed at home all day was desperately trying to drum up investors.
He said, Don, I've been thinking about you. I'm starting a little fund with a few friends, and if you were to put $10,000 in it, I think I could maybe, turn it into a nice little piece of money. Well, I said, let me think about it. I remember going into my wife, Mickey, and saying, can you imagine giving $10,000 to a fellow who doesn't get up and go to work in the morning?
Why wouldn't you? There's no doubt about his ability. There's no doubt about his honesty. And I remember the thrilling thought, he said, there'll come a day when this may throw off $1,000 a month.
He got doctors he didn't know to contribute at that time big money. This is a kid.
He started with $10,000 in 1950, and now he's worth $40 billion.
I wake up every night and think about it. No, now it's fun to look back on.
In 1962, Buffett had his eye on a New Bedford, Massachusetts textile mill called Berkshire Hathaway. It had one important thing going for it. The stock was cheap. 3 years later, he had bought enough shares to control the company.
It's a sort of a Ben Graham type of stock. It's traded down. The stock is traded down. The reason it's traded down is textiles are not such a good business anymore. But Warren thinks he can make a profit on it.
But soon the going got tough.
He told the management, "Look, I want the cash out of this business."
So what he starts to do is to squeeze the business, and whatever little dollop of profit he can squeeze, instead of putting it back in the textile business, he buys an insurance company. He buys a chain of weekly newspapers, he buys a steel plant, and little by little he begins to diversify, to reallocate the capital out of that textile mill into businesses with better futures.
And eventually it becomes a holding company for all of his other investments.
While Berkshire Hathaway the mill was withering, the holding company's assets kept growing. As an investor, Warren Buffett was phenomenal.